Holding. Zoom out. Button.
Well, good afternoon, dear students. You see, I was abruptly interrupted in my previous video, so I've now got time to continue. And I mean, I would start from this paragraph. Then I started down a third time. You see, we had covered part of it, but in order to maintain continuity, I'll start with this one. So the author has gone down twice and has come up to the surface because of the water itself. Of course, as we know that he planned, he made a strategy that he would make a big jump from the bottom of the pool and then come up to the surface, lie flat, and then paddle to the edge of the pool. But his strategy was silly and it didn't work. Let's see what happens a third time. So then I started down a third time. I sucked for air and got water. The yellowish uh, light was going out. Then all effort ceased. I relaxed. Even my legs felt limp, and a blackness swept over my brain. In fact, you know, he was uh, now falling into a state of unconsciousness. So he wasn't able to make any effort. His legs also were limp, that is lifeless, and there was a blackness. You know, it wiped out fear. It wiped out terror. There was no more panic. It was quiet and peaceful. Nothing to be afraid of. This is nice. To be drowsy, to go to sleep. No need to jump. Too tired to jump. It's nice to be carried gently, to float along in space. Tender arms around me. Tender arms like mothers. Now I must go to sleep. So he felt that it was nice. Obviously, there was no more effort, no more tension, no fear, no terror. He was going to fall unconscious and he thought that he was going to die and his soul would be carried to um, the other world. I crossed to oblivion and the curtain of life fell. Oblivion, as I told you, means forgetfulness. So he, in fact, lost consciousness, and you know, in a way, I, I repeat, in a way, he felt that he died. So, in a way, he experienced the sensation of dying. You know, what happens when one dies, and he has also experienced fear. Remember, both these things; these will matter at the end of the text. Okay, now the next I remember was that I was lying on my stomach beside the pool vomiting. The chap that threw me was saying, but I was only fooling. Someone said, the kid nearly died. Be alright, let's carry him to the locker room. Now we come to think as you read. What is the misadventure that William Douglas speaks about? Well, the misadventure here refers to the incident that happened when William Douglas, as a child, sat alone beside a pool waiting for other boys to come. He, in fact, wanted others to come so that he too could start. And there came a strong boy who, out of fun, picked him up and tossed him into the deep end of the pool. And he drowned. He almost drowned. At least thrice he went down to the bottom of the pool and came up to the surface of the water. And during the third time, he fell unconscious. So he had developed a fear of water right from his childhood, and this experience revived that fear. Okay, what were the series of emotions and fear that Douglas experienced when he was drowned into the pool? What plans did he make to come up to the surface? Well, the plan, was very simple. He planned that when his feet touched the bottom, he would make a huge jump, come to the surface, and then lie flat, and then paddle to the edge of the pool and be safe. But as we all know that it was a silly strategy, you know, the series of emotions. In fact, he describes uh, that when we are frightened, we lose all self-control, we lose all understanding. Gradually, we become panicky. We are unable to think sensibly, and you know, it affects our thinking. It affects our behavior, and very often we make wrong decisions. And he talks of every step of fear, how he felt choked in water, how he was suffocating, and he uses the phrase dirty yellow water. He almost developed a hatred for water, and um, he was very soon he grew so panicky that he while coming up, he tried to grab the ladders. He thought that there would be ladders. He even um, called for mother. He was obviously a child. He was a kid, so his thinking was affected, and he started behaving rashly and rather insensibly. So it affects our thinking, it affects our behavior, it affects our attitude, and you know all that um, that all that we need to overcome the situation. Whenever we we lose confidence, and whatever we can do, that too we are unable to do. Because of fear. Uh, so the fear, paralyzes us, and he describes different stages of fear. Initially, we think that we are able to plan. I mean, he even says that he was not frightened of out of wits. This means that he could think. You know, he was able to think, but he wasn't able to think sensibly. He was not able to work out a plan. Obviously, he had to work out a plan in a fraction of a minute in order to uh, save himself, and that was not possible because he was frightened. जब भी हम frightened होते हैं तो हमारी सोचने समझने की सलाहियत इतनी अफेक्टेड हो जाती है कि या तो हम कुछ कर ही नहीं पाते, और अगर कुछ करने की भी कोशिश करते हैं तो घबराहट में गलत स्टेप उठा जाते हैं. So all this he has described in detail, which you can pick up other details from the story. Now the third question: how did this experience affect him? Now the answer to this question is in the beginning of the next part, in the first two paragraphs. So let's read it, and you will find the answer. Several hours later, I walked home. I was weak and trembling. I shook and cried when I lay on my bed. I couldn't eat that night. For days, a haunting fear was in my heart. The slightest exertion upset me, making me wobbly in the knees and sick to my stomach. Wobbly means unstable, as we have seen in case of stories of stolen childhood. You remember wobbly doors, unstable doors. Here, wobbly knees, unstable knees, because he was very tired, and of course, he had experienced fear, and he was also sick to his stomach. That means he felt like vomiting. So, let's read on for a while. I never went back to the pool. I feared water. I avoided it whenever I could. Um, so This is the answer to the question then. You know, he felt very tired, he felt weak and trembling, he couldn't eat that night, and uh, you know, he felt very uneasy, even cried when he went to his bed, and for days he continued experiencing the fear, a haunting fear. Even the slightest of exertion, effort, in fact, made him unstable, tired, and he never went back to the pool. He feared water and avoided it whenever he could. So, this is the reply to the third question. Now we continue. A few years later, when I came to know the waters of the Cascades, I wanted to get into it. And whenever I did, whether I was wading the Titan or bumping river, these are all names, bathing in the warm lake of the goat rocks, the terror that had seized me in the pool would come, would come back. It would take possession of me completely. My legs would wouldn't would become paralyzed. Icy horror would grab my heart. This handicap stayed with me as the years rolled um, rolled by. In canoes on main lakes, fishing for landlocked salmon, bass fishing in New Hampshire, trout fishing on the Deschutes and Metolius in Oregon, fishing for salmon on the Columbia, at Bumping Lake in the Cascades. Wherever I went, the haunting fear of the water followed me. It ruined my fishing trips, deprived me of the joy of canoeing, boating, and swimming. So, the important point in this paragraph is that when he grew up, uh, he wanted to, to have, indulge in water sports and water activities like swimming, boating, canoeing, fishing, etc. But you see, the fear that he had developed, in fact, overcame him and almost paralyzed him. And this disadvantage, this handicap, remained with him for a long time, and it deprived him of the joy of canoeing and boating and swimming. You see, what happens is that as a child, we develop a fear, and at that time, it's not so important, you know. देखिए, सवाल ये है कि ये फियर का एक एक्सपीरियंस ये ऑथर क्यों नरेट कर रहा है. हम इसके बारे में भी डिस्कस करेंगे. लेकिन जब वो बड़ा होता है तो उसको जो ऑर्डिनरी एक्टिविटीज़ हैं, वाटर स्पोर्ट्स वगैरह, वो उसमें इंडल्ज नहीं कर सकता, क्योंकि उस पर इतना ज़्यादा वो फियर डेवलप हो चुका होता है कि वो फिर उसके साथ हमेशा रहता है और उसकी लाइफ को इफेक्ट करता है. That is why he decides to overcome it. We will talk about it more later on. Okay, I used every way I knew to overcome this fear, but it held me firmly in its grip. So he tried his best to overcome the fear, but then it held him firmly. That is, it continued to exist. Finally, one October, I decided to get an instructor and learn to swim. So he was determined to overcome his fear. You know, he engaged an instructor in October, remember. I went to a pool and practiced 5 days a week, an hour each day. Here, be careful. This is American English, Practice. Practice is used both as a noun and as a verb in American English. But in British English, practice with ICE is only a noun, and practice, that is TISE, is a verb. So at places you will find practiced being used as a verb, that is British English, but here it's an American writer. So in American English, practice is both a verb and noun. Practice with TICE. Okay, so he practiced 5 days a week and each hour a day. Look what the instructor did. The instructor put a belt around me, a rope attached to it, a rope attached to the belt went through a pulley that ran over an overhead cable. So अब हुआ क्या कि इसको एक बेल्ट में एक रोप बांध दी गई और उसके ऊपर एक केबल था, उसमें से पुली में से केबल होती हुई एक तरह उसमें बंधा हुआ था, दूसरा कोच ने पकड़ रखा था, इंस्ट्रक्टर ने. He held on to the end of rope and we went back and forth across the pool, hour after hour, day after day, week after week. So for weeks, what they practiced was that he was coming back and forth in the pool. In fact, as he tells us, on each trip across the pool, a bit of the panic that seized me, a bit of the panic seized me. Each time the instructor relaxed his hold on the rope and I went under, some of the old terror returned and my legs froze. तो क्या हुआ कि उसको वो इंस्ट्रक्टर ढील देता था, जब वो ढील देता था तो ऑथर पानी के अंदर चला जाता था, फिर जब वो खींचता था तो पानी से बाहर आ जाता था. Now when he was underwater, he was gripped by some of the fear, you know, and his legs used to freeze. For weeks, this continued. So what happened? It was 3 months before the tension began to slack, to reduce. So it took about 3 months for the tension to reduce. Then he taught me to put my face under water and exhale, and to raise my nose and inhale. जी, देखिए ये प्रैक्टिस होती है जब हम स्विमिंग करते हैं. तो जब हम फेस अपना पानी के अंदर रखते हैं तो सांस छोड़ते हैं, एक्सेल करते हैं, और जब हमें सांस लेनी होती है तो हम पानी से नोज अपनी बाहर निकालते हैं, तब सांस लेते हैं. नाउ रिमेंबर व्हेन ही वाज अ चाइल्ड ही वाज अनेबल टू ब्रीथ व्हेन ही वाज अंडर वाटर, you know, and at that time he didn't know how to inhale or exhale, but because he was paralyzed, because the fear had taken hold of him, so he wasn't able to think of such a common thing as inhaling and exhaling. देखिए क्योंकि वो डर से बिल्कुल जिसे उर्दू में कहते हैं मगलूब हो चुका था, यानी डर जो था वो उस पर एक तरह से पकड़ बना ली थी उसने. तो उसको इतनी सी बात नहीं समझ में आई कि पानी में अंदर सांस लेना ये पॉसिबल नहीं है, पानी से मुंह बाहर ही निकालना पड़ेगा सांस लेने के लिए. उसने तो ये सोचा कि वो जंप मारेगा, पानी के बाहर आ जाएगा और उसके बाद तैर के किनारे चला जाएगा, जैसे कि फिल्मों का हीरो सोचता है. तो वो बचपन में जाहिर बात है, उस वक्त एक तो बच्चा होने के नाते वो सोच नहीं थी उसकी, दूसरे वो अगर सोचता भी, जैसे कि उसने प्लान बनाया अपने हिसाब से, लेकिन वो फ्राइटेंड था तो वो सही प्लान नहीं बना सका. एनीवे, sorry, I repeated the exercise hundreds of times, this exercise of inhaling and exhaling. Bit by bit, I shed part of the panic that seized me when my head was bent under water. So little by little, you know, um, he was able to overcome part of the panic that used to grip him when his head was under water. Next, अब देखिए third step क्या था? Next, he held me at the side of the pool and had me kick with my legs. For weeks, I did just that. So the instructor then asked him to kick the water, and for weeks he did that. At first, my legs refused to work, but they gradually relaxed, and finally, I could command them. Thus, piece by piece, he built a swimmer, and when he had perfected each piece, he put them together into an integrated whole. तो क्या हुआ कि उसने धीरे धीरे, piece by piece, little by little, bit by bit, he built Douglas a swimmer. उसने उसे एक स्विमर की ट्रेनिंग दी, और जब उसे लगा कि हाँ अब सारी बातें कंप्लीट हो गई हैं, सो ही मेड अ कंप्लीट स्विमर. He made Douglas a complete swimmer, and then what happened in April? He said, "Now you can swim. Dive off dive off and swim the length of the pool, crawl stroke." So remember, he started his training in October, and then in April, uh, in about 5 or 6 months, he was able to swim. The instructor said that he would be able to swim, and in fact, he was asked to swim the length of the pool, crawl stroke. I did. The instructor was finished. That means he was successful, and the job of instructor was over. But I was not finished. That means although the instructor was confident that Douglas would be able to swim, but Douglas himself was not confident, you know, I still wondered if um, uh, if I would be terror stricken when I was alone in the pool. So he still thought that perhaps when he would be alone in the pool, then he would experience fear. Because up to this time, he was accompanied by the instructor. So what he did, I tried it. I swam the length up and down. That means he went to the one edge of the pool and then came back to the same edge. Tiny vestiges of old terror would return. So small remains of terror returned. But now I could frown and say to that terror, that is, but now he could look rather angrily at the fear and he would say, trying to scare me, hey? Well, here's to you. That is, look, and off I would go for another length of the pool. So that means, um, he in a way challenged the fear, and of course swam another length of the pool, and felt confident. Just a minute. So we can probably quickly take. It's rather a long one. So, or let's quickly take one more paragraph in this video. This went on until July. So, you remember, he hired an instructor in October, and in April, he became a perfect swimmer, and then by July, he, overcame some of his fear by swimming alone in the pool. But I was still not satisfied. I was not sure that all the terror had left. So he was still a bit confused whether he had overcome his fear of water or not. Look how serious he is about the whole process of overcoming the fear of water. So what he did, so I went to Lake Wentworth in New Hampshire, dived off a dock at Triggs Island, and swam 2 miles across the lake to Stampact Island. I swam the crawl, breaststroke, side stroke, and backstroke. Only once did the terror return, when I was in the middle of the lake. I put my face under and saw nothing but um, bottomless water. The old sensation returned in miniature. In miniature, at small scale. I laughed and said, well, Mr. Terror, what do you think you can do to me? It fled, and I swam on. So you see, he is making very sincere effort to overcome the fear. And as far as this video is concerned, we will stop it here and finish this lesson in the next video, and discuss the questions also. So for the time being, I stop it here. Thank you.